Hi everyone, and welcome to The Build Show with JP. I'm your host JP, and it's my privilege and honor to have with us Pam Bradbury. And let me tell you about Pam. She is one of Australia's top psychics and mediums. She actually is also a published author, a radio presenter. She has worked with thousands of people over the last 30 years, both privately and publicly. Her clients have included international CEOs, major executives of corporations all around the world, media moguls, politicians, you name it, she's helped them, and the run-of-the-mill folks as well. So it's my privilege to have her with us today. Pam, welcome, and thank you for coming on to The Build Show.
Thanks, John, for having me. It's lovely to be here, and great to meet you as well. And hear about all your work, which is amazing.
Well, thank you for that. And I, always kind of start with what are you excited about right now in life?
I think this time of my life is pretty important because you can relax, you are content with yourself, you're comfortable in your own skin, and really and truly you just go with the flow.
That's amazing. I love your byline, by the way, which is to believe, or actually to see, if I get this right, to see the invisible and to believe in the incredible.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's amazing.
Yeah, I think we all see the invisible.
Yeah.
With our imagination, we can all see into our futures, but we are also afraid of two things. One, that it may not happen, and two, that we've got to make it happen.
Yeah. So either way, there's that fear there.
Yeah, exactly. And so there are parts of our personality that stop us from doing what we want to do. And I think that's pretty normal for most of us.
Right.
But we all have a level of basically intellectual psychic ability.
Right.
And it is an intelligence. And it is an ability within every single one of us. So for example, John, have you ever been sort of busy at work, doing sort of things on automatic, and all of a sudden you think about a friend or a colleague that you hadn't heard of from a long time?
Absolutely, right? I think everyone can relate to that.
Then the phone rings,
yep,
and bang, they're there.
There they are.
Yeah, well, you're on that same vibration, you're on that same level of connectedness at that moment in time. And therefore it hits.
Right.
Okay, and there's another beautiful one that's an example of a level of psychic ability within all of us, and that the best one is you're driving home and you're in your car, and we all can drive on automatic. We're in the traffic, but we're actually thinking about something else.
Mine's just wandering.
Yeah, you know that moment. And then you get home and you say to yourself, oh my God, did I stop at the traffic lights? What happened at the roundabout? You were not present. You were on automatic. So you're in what we call an altered state of consciousness.
Right.
And that altered state of consciousness is actually totally out of sync with what you're doing. Right. Which is when you tap into that type of energy field is quite phenomenal. So we all do it.
Right. No, it's true, and you just help people connect with that and actually move forward in their lives, which is great. And I know that you've looked at the build framework too, and kind of understanding that framework. It's really interesting to understand, I think, how you would kind of frame, like, let's just start with B. And for those of you who don't know, BUILD is an acronym for build relationships, understand the business, implement strategies, lead and inspire, and deliver excellence. And I know you've done all those things in your life, of course.
I know about that.
So if we look at build relationships as it relates to the build framework, what are some elements you can share about your life and the importance of building relationships that we can share with our listeners today?
Well, I think for me, because a lot of my work is over the telephone, on Skype, or WhatsApp, or FaceTime, because a lot of my work is all around the world.
Well, technology nowadays, it's like you can use it to actually connect with so many people. That's amazing.
It's amazing. So you've got to build a relationship within 30 seconds.
Right.
So the relationship comes from the voice. So we all know that we actually sense things that are actually invisible to ourselves, but they're sensory, and you mentioned the word feeling.
Yeah.
And we hear things which we're taking on board, which are not what we see. So we're constantly absorbing information from all levels. So therefore, when somebody calls me, I have to get the connection with them within 30 seconds. And it'll be from the tone of their voice. Now, as I speak to them, that will change. And as it changes, I can adapt my conversation to theirs. So you mentioned at the beginning, let's breathe. So I get in touch with their breath. So if they're talking very fast like that, then I know the stress levels are really high, or they're nervous.
Right.
So we slow it down, and as we slow it down, the conversation down, then I can actually start to read what's going on for them. But one of the things I find really useful is to actually make a connection with them before I speak on the phone.
Right. And
So
how
I
do you
will
do that?
write things down, because information comes to you from all aspects of life, doesn't it?
Right.
You know, the wind, the weather, the light, the sun, all aspects. So I will be tuning into them on that sort of inner perception level before I call them. So I'd just like to share this
Right.
with you the other day. I just share this with you because it's really funny. So there I am waiting. I'm going to ring this lady, and her name is Paula. She won't mind me telling you her name.
Okay.
And,
Hi, Paula.
Exactly. And Paula is going, I'm going to speak to Paula. I don't know who Paula is, but I've got the name Paula and a phone number.
Okay.
And she's not going to be on camera, she's just on the phone.
Right.
So I think, right, I've got to tune in. So the first thing I wrote, and I wrote 4 things down on this list. And the first thing I wrote down was animals. Animals. So how am I going to talk to her about animals? I haven't met this woman, I don't know anything about her. And the first thing I'm going to say is animals, and in particular, dogs. Like, what use is that?
Right.
Somebody that's psychic is going to ring you up and
So that
say,
just comes to you. So you're in stillness, you connect with that,
Yeah.
and then that animal's dog just comes to you and you write it down.
Yeah,
Okay?
right,
Got it.
right, okay. So, and there was 4 or 5 other things.
Right.
One was about financial security, one was about her property, and there was other things there.
Right.
So she comes on the phone, and I said, look, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I could tell straight away that this woman was mature. She was probably in her 50s. She would be able to take it.
Right.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to tell her. And I
Right.
say, look, this is really funny. You're going to crack up when I tell you. But I just have this list, and the first thing on the list is a whole pile of dogs and animals here.
Right.
And she just burst out laughing. She said, if you could see me right now, I'm sitting on my veranda. I've just come back from the flower markets in Sydney, and I've got all my dogs with me.
Right.
And I'm having a cup of coffee talking to you, and 2 dogs from the farm next door have just wandered in.
Right.
Now, Paula will tell you this if you called her, and we both just hysterically laughing over the phone.
Right.
So, of course, that rapport which you mentioned is instant,
Yeah.
because you've already made that sort of connection. So therefore, you talked about how you make connections with people. It's instant, and I think we all do it.
Right.
But some of us are scared to make that step forward. So yeah, I think we all connect on these different levels. And you know, even when you go into a shop, you will pick up on the person behind the counter immediately. I mean, you're a people person like myself.
Yeah.
So therefore you have this inner awareness constantly that we're using. And we all do it to a greater or lesser degree. For me, it's a greater, not a lesser.
No, and that's amazing. And I think what you're hearing here, guys, is the importance in building relationships to tap into that ability to feel things too, right? And it's not just about the words or how you're moving around. It's like that connection that we all have, because, I mean, you said it before, everyone has these abilities, right?
Yeah.
But you just have to learn how to access them. Is that an accurate statement from
Well,
your
also be
standpoint?
aware of them,
Right.
and then utilize them.
Right.
But I do think you have to be a people person to actually really embrace that, like yourself with
Right.
your teachings. The same thing. You have this ability to actually teach people. You're a
Right.
teacher as well as an expert in your field. So
Right.
therefore, you have an innate ability to share information.
Right. So that's a great segue, I think, to understanding the business. And, you know, certainly you've understood a lot of things about your business. But as we sit here and talk to the listeners today, what are some things about understand the business that you know now that you think would be helpful for our listeners?
In my situation, I would say perseverance, because in my area, in my field particularly, there's a lot of skeptics, and you have to be committed to what you want to do,
Right.
and then have the discipline to stay with it. It's discipline and perseverance that get you there. I also believe in systems.
Yeah.
And I met somebody years ago that inspired me a lot. A little bit like you've met a lot of people. And this one lady was incredibly good at getting back to people and following up.
Right.
So I've had a lot of people that have been my mentors, but they didn't know they were.
Right. It's just because how they role modeled the way,
Yes,
basically, and you were
yes.
able to say, oh, that's really impactful.
Yes,
I'm going to
yeah.
follow that lead.
Yeah, and so I always ring everybody back. Always, always. Always. I never let anything slip away.
Right.
I always follow up. The other thing, I had another role model that was amazing and still is amazing, and she was so disciplined with the way she ran her business, and I copied her style.
Right.
And her style was of excellence.
Gotcha.
And I think those two people in particular influenced me the most.
And it's interesting about influence, and it's talking about, you know, hear the director call cut in the background, but actually we're in Sydney now and the fog just lifted. So all these planes are actually flying over the studio now. So I apologize, because you're probably going to hear a lot of plane in this episode perhaps, but we'll just talk through it and we'll understand the business of perseverance and actually going on with the show as we need to. So if you talk about understanding the business and then the next letter, which is I, implement strategies, and you kind of talked about some of those right now, about the strategies of following up. By the way, so important for everyone to do. I mean, the common sense practices of some people of just, you know, doing what you say you're going to do and following up and calling someone. I mean, a lot of times that basic common sense is not actually common practice for people, right? And when you do, that can be everything. But along the lines of implementing strategies, are there other strategies that you've implemented in your life that are really something that you think will be meaningful and helpful for our listeners today?
Yeah, I would say you really need to do, in small business particularly, some form of financial small business bureau type of course about how to run your finances.
Right.
I think that's very important. How not to overcapitalize on your marketing side of your business, because let's face it, I've been in the psychic industry for 30 years.
Right.
But really and truly, you strip away the content and what the actual business is, it's a business.
Right.
And so therefore, you have a website to maintain, you have books to write, you have a whole pile of expenses that in my industry is never talked about. Yes. Because it's a no-no, because it's supposed to be given away for free. But how am I going to live?
That's not a business then, right? No. That's a hobby, if even,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So from my perspective, it's like, well, hang on a minute, I've got a car to drive, petrol to fill, I've got to buy clothes, I've got to buy food, I've got to live. And it costs a lot of money to live today, an individual. It's expensive. So therefore, you've got to look after the business side of your business. It has to be the most important thing. Because if you're not looking after your business can't grow. And that's simply basic fundamentals, really.
Well, it's interesting how that connects, true, because what you're saying is clearly you have to understand the business, right, and what those elements are, so you can implement the right strategies, like having the financial model that you need, having the right website design and the marketing, but not going too far in the marketing. All these things are specific strategies, but the curious thing is that they're actually built upon an understanding of the business. And that's how that whole centrifugal looping thing works, which leads us right to, obviously, leading and inspiring, which obviously you do every day when you talk to people. What are some things you can share about leading and inspiring with us?
Well, I think possibly listening to people's stories. I was talking to Sid just before we came on camera, and I've met some incredible people with the most incredible lives and the things that have happened to them, and the way they overcome everything, and their spiritual connection to themselves to overcome any difficulty. That's sort of been a big learning for me, and I think I've drawn from that, and I think it's kept me in the industry as a whole. This sort of, like yourself, this love of people, and inspiring, you know, myself as well to keep going, and they've inspired me. I think my inspirations come from the people I've met.
That's interesting, because I see the same thing, right? It's like, you know, you
keeps me going.
Actually connect with others, and you're inspired by just being in their presence.
And you know, I've had so many experiences that have changed my life. And
give me the top one.
Oh, okay. Well, Well, the top one is when you actually work as a medium, and you make a connection with children in the spirit world. And that, for me, was a major turning point. It was a major turning point in my own personal journey of understanding life after death. Because when you're tuning into a child in the spirit world, the children don't make up stories. Children say it as it is. They have no ego. So the information is just pure, coming from a child. And I met this young boy in the spirit world. His name actually was Ethan Clough, and he's, unbeknown to me at the time, has had a huge impact in the Spastics Association in Sydney, and I didn't know that. So, you know, in my industry, you don't know what you're tapping into when you're tapping into it.
Sure.
And it unfolds as you talk to people. And then afterwards, I personally go, wow, that's
Right.
amazing.
Full on, as they say.
So, you're like, constantly, every day, wow.
Right.
And so this young chap came into my auric field. I could hear his voice, I could see him really clearly, like you can see me, just the same. And I just said to the mother, I've got a little boy here, I think his name is Easton, E-A-S-T-O-N. And she said, no, his name is Ethan. And she said, I don't know how you can possibly have my son there. I said, well, he's got blonde hair, he's got blue eyes, he looks like this. And she said, that's correct. So I carried on telling her about this child and this car and all these things, and it went on and on and on, and she just sat there with a straight face. And I'm thinking, goodness me, there's no connection coming here.
Yeah, one second, there's a plane going overhead. I love this story though, and you're connected, but I want to make sure that everyone hears this. So we're just going to pause for a second while the plane goes up. If you're listening to this on audio and you don't see us, there's a plane flying over, so bear with us. It's gone now. Continue that story. It's really captivating.
So I'm Pam, the person, and I'm revealing all this information, not really understanding what the significance is. And so eventually I said, well, please could you explain? You obviously aren't understanding, or there's something we're not making clear here. She said, you can't possibly be talking to my son. I said, well, I've got this information and I can see him. Because he was blind, he was deaf, and he couldn't speak. He was born without any of those faculties.
Right.
But I said, well, he's talking to me as if I'm talking to you. He said, well, I just can't believe it. I said, well, he's telling me. So we went through all the things he told me, including his sister and the name of his sister and all the things that had happened to him. And he then told me he'd been to Government House and he'd met Kevin Rudd. He'd met Kevin Rudd.
Right.
So this child wouldn't have known what Kevin Rudd was about. Then she explained that he had been, in his lifetime, he'd raised a lot of money for the disabled ability, and his face had been the face of all their publicity.
Right.
And he'd been to Government House and received an award from Kevin Rudd.
Right.
So she explained it to me.
Yeah.
So to me that was like, wow. I mean, that was a big wow.
Yeah.
And there've been many big wows. So I think this work for me gives us a sense of going forward, that there is life beyond life. We don't understand what that concept is because it's not three-dimensional, and so therefore it doesn't have a structure or a shape or a form as we know it. Right. So it's very hard for us to understand. So the easiest way to explain is an energy field.
Yeah.
That you can tap into, and as you tap into that very high frequency, it creates a form and a shape that we can recognize, and then we can discuss. Does that make sense to you?
Amazingly, it makes sense. And also, you're truly actually demonstrating, leading, and inspiring right now in what you just did. So I really appreciate that. And that brings us to delivering excellence, right? Which is, the final kind of step in the build framework. But all of those things come together, right? You build relationships so you can understand the business, you can implement strategies, which we talked about, you lead and inspire. And I guess the question on delivering excellence is, what does that really mean to you, and how do you think people in their lives can actually truly deliver excellence in their lives?
I think being yourself, just being who you are. You are enough. We are enough. You are enough in yourself.
Such a good message.
I'm enough.
Write that down.
We are enough. You are enough. I am enough. We just need to be who we really are and just enjoy being ourselves. And I think that's what we're here to do in life, is enjoy ourselves, enjoy being who we are, not enjoyment as a sort of hedonistic, perfection type thing, more who we just are.
Right.
And I think when you get to my stage in life, you really get that.
Right.
And I think that's what comes with age. You get this wisdom of I am enough.
Right.
And if we can all be enough at any age, and enjoy just that, then we are living a fulfilling life.
That's such an amazing message, and we're enough whether we're in silence or there's a plane going overhead or we're, you know, in a studio that isn't soundproof. I mean, we're enough, and we don't have to struggle with that. We can allow that, and we can be okay with it. I think so many people aren't okay with that, right? Aren't okay with the things happening that aren't exactly how they want to control. They're not okay with themselves how they are because they want to be better or they want to
something different,
achieve something else, which doesn't mean you don't, you know, strive to, you know, improve and grow, but it's about the journey and being okay with the process. Is that what you'd say?
And, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, but I think we're here, you're here to experience what you're doing here. This is what you want to experience. You want to experience the whole of this process.
Right.
And that's wonderful. You're fulfilling yourself. You're reaching your potential because you're doing what you want to do. And you're making it happen, and you're enjoying it, and you're loving it. And that's it. There isn't anything else. So the person behind the lights wants to be the light man. The person behind the camera wants to be the cameraman, and they're doing it. Hooray, let's celebrate. That's what you're supposed, that's what you want to do.
Right.
So those of us who aspire to something, that want to do it, go and do it.
Right.
You've got one, there's no dress rehearsal, there's one go.
Exactly.
So embrace it, go and do it. And I wanted to do this because I wanted to understand energy forces, consciousness, and the work that you do. You know, I wanted to understand that. But what I actually found was being enough.
Right.
It was like, let's go back to basics and just be who I am and enjoy being me, and that's enough.
Right.
So now it makes it so simple.
Yeah.
But I think we have to live life to get that answer.
Right. And in doing that, then you're enough for others too, and you can truly lead and inspire and do all the things that we've been talking about doing. And I love that too, because you've touched on, again, plane going overhead, just roll with it. We're enough with the plane. We're enough. The plane's enough. They're all enough. The fog has lifted. The planes are taking off, and we're taking off too. And I want to take off into the topic of personal and professional connection, right? Because as you know, Build is a heart-based system for personal and professional growth, but I think that you just articulated so well, but if you could say a couple more words about that integration of personal and professional life and how you've applied it also to your personal life, right? And not just your professional life.
Oh, okay. Although personal life's a different story altogether, John, because I have a wacky sense of humour, right? And I think the sense of humour keeps me going in my personal life, and also a sense of ridiculous, which is the incredible, you know. And so I look for all the time for the incredible, because it's there if we look for it, and we get so caught up with something that we're going for, that, you know, this part of ourselves that, my personal life, I suppose, is quite different, quite a different life. Very practical, very sensible, very organised.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha. So you do have a delineation between the two, and that's important for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you'd be constantly in this. Well, it's not chaotic energy, but it's energy that you tap into, you move into the space of it.
Right.
And you can't live in that space.
Right.
You need to live in the practical three-dimensional world.
Right. So in a sense, be able to turn it on in your case and turn it off, and not actually all the time be in that pool of feeling everything that's happening. Right?
I mean, if you were constantly living in the space of seeing animals around somebody, how are you going to function as an individual if you're in that crazy, mad, you know, it's not mad, but you know, chaotic energy that's spinning everywhere. And I think that comes back to mind energy as well. You know, what's the difference between the brain and the mind, and how do we make those connections and the signals? And that was something that I spent a long time studying, and then realized it was just not necessary.
Right. You're enough.
Yeah.
Right.
I let go of it all. And just enjoy.
Right.
Just enjoy the work and the people.
Are there any final kind of words of wisdom that you would like to share with our listeners out there that you think can be very impactful for them in a positive way?
Words of wisdom, that's an interesting one. I would say be your own wisdom, be your own. Draw on what's good in your life, not what's not there or not. You know, often we look for things that aren't there. As when I've got this or when I've done that. But I think I say that to an awful lot of people. It would be my biggest message is look at what you have created, not what you haven't got.
Bingo.
Look at what you've created and look for the good always. And it will take some time in a conversation with somebody in a session for them to see all that. And when you've only got half an hour, you've got to get them to that place very quickly to see, yes, you have got a home. Yes, you have got people that love you. Okay, it may not be the partner you want yet. You may be on your own, but you have got people in your life that really do love you and care for you, and you are not alone. And there are things in life you have achieved and experienced. So it's looking for what is there, not what's missing.
Right. That's amazing.
And actually valuing what that is, you know, because we've all got a story. Every one of us has a story.
Yeah.
And our story is personal, and it's very private to a lot of people, and it's very important because it's your life.
I hope you guys are taking notes and writing this stuff down. This is amazing. And we're running out of time here, but let me ask you, how can they get a hold of you? How can, you know, people reach out to you to get even more words of wisdom?
Well, for me, I always have this approach, and I'm sure you do too. If your spirit needs my spirit, then we'll spiritually connect. And we've connected today.
Right.
So,
but sometimes it's good to have a website address.
well, my website is, but I still believe that.
Right, yeah.
Because I do believe there's a magnetic force field that attracts people to one another.
Absolutely.
And so my website is pambradbury.com.
Okay.
So pretty simple, just
Great.
my name.
So reach out and
Yeah.
get connected,
Yeah,
get some words
yeah,
of wisdom, get
yeah.
a reading. You offer readings and
Yeah, I
things,
do
and-
work on the phone, I do work on Skype, I do FaceTime, WhatsApp. I no longer have an office. I used to, for many years, have an office in Crow's Nest, but I don't go to the office anymore. So it's mostly over the phone, and they can make a booking online if they want to. It's usually for 30 minutes.
Right.
And I record it,
Great.
and then I send the recording to them, because I think the recording's important.
Yeah.
They can come back
They
to
can
it.
reflect on it and
Yeah.
listen to it. And there might be
Yeah.
some people flying in that plane right now to see you. So we'll see if they'll land and get a hold of you right now. Look, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Pam, for being on
Lovely
the
to
show.
meet you. Lovely. Thank
It's
you for
been
having
my
me.
privilege to have you
And
here.
good luck.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time on The Build Show. Thanks for joining us. That's a wrap for this episode. We'll see you next time on The Build Show.